Okay, you're ready for this? This deep dive is going to blow your mind. We're talking about the link between obesity and type 2 diabetes.
Mm.
And we've got some really cool research, a conversation between some experts, and it's going to, I think, completely change how you think about fat cells.
Yeah.
Get ready. We're going to uncover how these little cells breathe, why their size matters so much, and how inflammation just comes in and messes everything up.
You know, what's interesting is we think of fat cells, those adipocytes,
Right.
like these inert blobs just sitting there.
Right.
But they're not. They're super dynamic and organized, kind of like any other organ.
Organized. I was
Yeah.
picturing like a junk drawer in the body, you know. What do you mean by
Think of
organized?
it like a crate of oranges, all perfectly stacked.
Oh, okay.
They're arranged in this matrix of collagen. And here's the thing. They actually like to be fit rather than overstuffed.
Wait, fat cells want to be fit? I've never heard that before. Why is that?
Well, you see, they need to breathe, just like us, taking in oxygen through their surface. But when a fat cell gets bigger, the volume grows way faster than its surface area.
So it's like trying to breathe through one of those tiny coffee stirrers when you need a huge open window.
Yeah, exactly. This limited surface area, compared to how big it's gotten, basically suffocates the cell.
Wow.
It can't get enough oxygen to keep up.
Okay, now that's an image I'm not going to forget. A suffocating fat cell. What happens next? Does it just give up?
Not quite. It sends out these distress signals like a ship that's, lost at sea.
Oh, wow.
And these signals, they attract immune cells,
Okay.
which, usually those are our protectors, right? Defending us from infections and stuff.
Right.
But here's the thing. They kind of overreact in this case.
So our bodies haven't really figured out this whole obesity thing yet.
Well, you could say that. We evolved to handle, like, feast or famine, not this constant surplus of calories we have now. So these immune cells, trying to help, they trigger an inflammatory response in the fat tissue. And that's the problem. It becomes chronic, just constantly simmering under the surface.
Okay, I'm getting a bad feeling about this chronic inflammation. Is this where type 2 diabetes starts?
Yeah, you're right on. This chronic inflammation kicks off a chain reaction that leads to insulin resistance.
For those of us who maybe didn't pay attention in biology class, what exactly is insulin resistance?
Think of insulin like a key that unlocks the doors of our cells, right?
Okay.
Letting glucose, that sugar, get in and give them energy.
Okay.
But those inflammatory chemicals we talked about, they basically jam up the locks on the cell doors.
So the insulin key is there, but it can't turn the lock.
Exactly. Insulin can't do its job. Glucose builds up in the blood. And the cells, they're starving. That's the main thing with type 2 diabetes, high blood sugar, and cells that can't get the fuel they need.
Whoa, hold on. Let me get this straight. So we've got these big, suffocating fat cells sending out SOS signals,
Right.
bringing in immune cells that trigger inflammation, which then messes with our insulin and blood sugar. And this can lead to type 2 diabetes.
Yep, you got it. And it doesn't stop there. This whole thing, it impacts the entire body, all sorts of organs and systems.
Okay, now we're getting to the serious stuff. What happens next in this chain reaction?
Our bodies, they're pretty amazing, always trying to stay balanced. To deal with all that sugar in the blood, the kidneys go into overdrive.
Okay.
They try to dilute the blood by holding on to more water.
Oh, so that's why people with diabetes are always thirsty and peeing. It's the body trying to flush out the sugar.
Right, exactly. But all that extra blood volume puts a strain on the heart. It's like constantly blowing more air into a balloon. Eventually, it can't stretch any further. The heart has to work harder to pump all that extra blood, and it can become enlarged and stiff. It's called adverse remodeling, and it can lead to some serious complications like heart failure.
This is heavy stuff. So we're not just talking about blood sugar anymore. It's like a domino effect impacting everything.
You got it. Even in the research we looked at, they compared it to patching a balloon with tape. Each patch is like damage to the heart muscle.
Wow, this deep dive just got real. We started with fit fat cells, and now we're talking about heart failure.
Yeah, that's the reality. Our bodies are all connected. When one system gets messed up, it triggers problems everywhere else.
This is pretty eye-opening. And a little scary, if I'm being honest.
Yeah,
But what can our listeners do with this information?
that's a really good question. And it's something we're going to dig into in the next part of our deep dive.
Yeah, okay. That was a lot to process. But you know what they say, knowledge is power, right?
Yeah.
I mean, understanding how something as simple as how big our fat cells are can have such a big impact on our health is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, for sure. It really shows just how important it is to take care of ourselves. And it's not about fitting into a certain size or looking a certain way. It's about creating an environment inside where our cells can actually thrive.
Right, so we're talking about stopping that whole inflammation cascade thing. But how do we even start? It seems so complicated.
The good news is we can actually make a real difference with some pretty simple lifestyle changes.
Okay, let's hear it. What can our listeners do to support those fit fat cells and keep inflammation in check?
One of the most powerful things is, our diet. By focusing on foods that are packed with nutrients, we're giving our bodies what they need to function at their best.
So ditching the junk food and going for whole natural foods.
Exactly. Things like colorful fruits and veggies, they're full of antioxidants,
Hmm.
lean protein to build and repair muscles, healthy fats for hormones and cell function. And don't forget fiber-rich whole grains to keep things moving.
So basically we're giving ourselves a gourmet meal instead of like fast food.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
What about exercise? We always hear it's important, but how does it fit into all of this?
Exercise is huge. It's not just about weight management. It actually directly affects how sensitive our bodies are to insulin. When we move, our cells get better at using insulin, which means glucose can get in easier.
So it's not just burning calories, it's actually improving how our cells use energy.
Exactly. And being active regularly helps to reduce inflammation throughout the body. It's like giving your immune system a chance to chill out and do its job properly.
Okay, I like the sound of a relaxed immune system. Are there any specific types of exercise that work best?
That's a good question. You know any movement is good, but research shows that combining aerobic exercise, like brisk walking or swimming, with strength training, which builds muscle, is really effective for improving insulin sensitivity and reducing inflammation.
So getting our heart rate up and challenging our muscles is key. But we can't forget about stress, right? That has a huge impact on our bodies too.
Oh, absolutely. Chronic stress throws everything out of whack. It makes your body release hormones like cortisol, which can increase inflammation and make insulin resistance worse.
It's like stress just adds fuel to the fire,
Right.
making everything worse.
Mm.
So how do we deal with stress?
The good news is there are lots of ways to manage stress. Mindfulness and meditation, yoga, spending time in nature. These things can help calm your nervous system and lower those stress hormones.
Even just taking a few deep breaths throughout the day can make a difference, right?
Absolutely. It's about finding those moments of peace in our busy lives. And remember, it's not about being perfect. Life is going to be stressful sometimes.
Right.
It's about finding healthy ways to cope that work for you and making them part of your routine.
Progress, not perfection, right? It's those small, consistent changes that make the biggest difference in the long run. But sometimes it's hard to know where to start. What advice would you give our listeners who are feeling kind of overwhelmed with all this information?
I would say start small. Focus on just one thing at a time. Maybe this week you swap out soda for water, or you add a 20-minute walk to your day. Once that becomes a habit, you can add something else. And celebrate those small wins. They can really keep you motivated.
That's great advice. It's so easy to get caught up in the big picture and feel like we need to change everything at once. But even those little steps forward can make a real difference.
For sure. And the best part is when you start making these changes, you'll probably notice a difference in your energy levels, your mood, how you feel overall.
It's amazing how connected everything is. From our diet and exercise habits to how much stress we have, and even the health of those tiny fat cells. It really comes down to creating a supportive environment for our bodies.
Exactly. And that brings up another important point. Even with all this information and the best intentions, sometimes we need a little extra help. So we can't forget about healthcare professionals.
You're right, it's not just about figuring everything out on our own. So what role do healthcare professionals play in all of this? It can feel a little overwhelming, So having a doctor or a registered dietitian to help you can be like really important.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They can give you advice just for you based on your needs and your goals and, help you understand your test results or anything you might be worried about. It's like having an expert guide for your health journey.
It's a team effort. We learn as much as we can, and then we get help from experts to actually use that knowledge.
Exactly. And speaking of using what we've learned, how about we do a quick recap of what we talked about today?
Yeah, let's sum up all this awesome information. What are the big things our listeners should take away from this?
The most important thing is that fat cells aren't just these passive storage units. They're active cells that want to be fit and healthy. And when they get too full, they send out distress signals, and that triggers inflammation.
And that inflammation is the link between obesity and type 2 diabetes. It starts this chain reaction that impacts everything from how our body uses sugar to the health of our hearts.
You got it. But the good news is we can do something about it by making healthy choices like eating nutritious foods, exercising regularly, and managing stress. we can help our cells thrive.
It's all about those little changes we make every day that add up to big results over time. Things like swapping soda for water, taking a brisk walk, or even just finding a few minutes to breathe deeply can have a huge impact on our health and how we feel overall.
That's a great way to put it. It's about making choices that support our bodies from the inside out.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of fat cells inflammation and type 2 diabetes, let's leave our listeners with one last thought. Imagine your body not as a bunch of separate parts, but as one big interconnected system. Every choice we make, from the food we eat to how we handle stress, impacts the whole system.
I love that. It's like taking care of a garden. You nourish the soil, give it water and sunlight, and create the best environment for everything to grow and flourish.
That's such a great analogy. So to everyone listening, we encourage you to remember that everything is connected. Take what you learned today and use it to make positive changes in your own life. Start small, celebrate your successes, and remember that you have the power to create a healthier and happier you.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.